Hello everyone. This is the 11th part of the story, Marvel Unlimited Skills, I Can Download. Chapter 78, Ability. Beep, congratulations, you have obtained the godly fighting ability. The system's words merely made Bruce's eyes light up in delight, as he had expected all of this, and nothing less. His various abilities had exceeded the limits of human beings. As for the existence above human beings, that was naturally the Aesir. This was the worldview of the people in the Marvel movie universe, so it was not hard for Bruce to make that guess. Regardless, Bruce's last godly fighting ability was a combat ability. However, living up to its name, this combat ability included everything, from firearms, to cold weapons, to bare fists, everything that could be used for fighting. The ability made the owner have a level of control over all of the above-mentioned fighting styles that was far beyond a human's means. It could be said that as long as it came to combat, this ability was perfect. With the godly fighting ability, Bruce's combat prowess had completely surpassed humans. The current him was just like a war machine, he was extremely capable in every situation. To be able to acquire this ability was only because of the variety and amount of abilities of the same type that were used to integrate into a single one, essentially turning him from a jack of all trades into a master of all trades. While it sounded too good to be true, it was not that surprising. After all, how else would an ability named Godly Fighting Ability live up to its name? The three integrated abilities Bruce had obtained today had all exceeded the human limits, further strengthening Bruce's viewpoint that as long as he kept integrating abilities, he would eventually become a real god. Although the number of abilities he possessed had been reduced, each new ability had an extremely strong power in use. It had to be said that when it came to abilities, it was always quality over quantity. Every truly strong person owned less abilities than the average Joe, however the power of those few abilities were incredible. A common saying among the powerful was, no matter how ingenious your use of abilities is, or how many abilities you have, I will always beat you relying solely on my really powerful ability. When one was able to make those words a reality, only then would they be considered as being powerful. As for the current Bruce, with the addition of his new abilities, he possessed strength that was very close to the strength of a real Aesir. After going over his thoughts, Bruce opened the system panel again to check his changes. Name, Bruce Lite. Identity, Level 6 Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Ability, Demigod Body, God's Bloodline, Godly Fighting Ability, Control of Thunder and Lightning, Spider Telepathy, Body and Shield as one. Warehouse, Super Vibranium Shield, Mark 8 Armor. Balance, $2 million. Energy value, 100 points. Before integrating his abilities, Bruce had 700 points of energy value left, and yet in just a short period of time, he was only left with a measly 100. With the leftover energy value he couldn't really do much, but they should be enough to upgrade the Mark armor one more time. And that was exactly what he needed now, as before he obtained the status of God, the Mark armor would be very important to him. That was especially so when it came to dealing with enemies that were weak individually, yet strong in massive numbers. The Mark armor was truly a highly efficient weapon when it came to mass slaughter. Moreover, another use for it was the fact that he could use the Mark armor to hide his real strength. After all, one could never be too careful, and revealing all of his power would make him vulnerable. Another important point about the Mark armor was that when it was upgraded to its end form, it would become God armor. At that point in time, the armor would be completely integrated with Bruce, and he could burst out with ridiculously powerful strength at any point. Following that, Bruce used up his last 100 points of energy value to upgrade the armor 2 times, making it Mark 10. This version of the armor would also be made by Iron Man as well, however that was in the future. Less than 10 minutes later, the armor had finished upgrading. It was important to note that this version of the Mark 10 armor was more powerful and perfect than the one Iron Man would develop in the future. As for the Vibranium Shield, Bruce ignored it for now. After all, there was not much he could do now that he had emptied out his energy value reserves. The time it took for Bruce to go through the integration processes and the changes to his body, as well as upgrading the Mark armor, amounted to a total of 3 days. During these 3 days, no one came to disturb him, making the process relatively uneventful. After that, Bruce got up from his bed. At present, Black Widow, Hawkeye and Captain America had been stationed at the Avengers base, and it could be said that it had finally begun to take shape. As for the other three superheroes, one of them, S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't dare let anywhere near their facilities, another had returned to his homeland, and the last one had an enormous company to manage. After greeting Hawkeye and the others, Bruce went straight to the training ground. The Avengers base had a dedicated training ground for the superheroes, as after all, the regular one wouldn't do them much good now, would it? Now that Bruce had gotten new abilities, he had become a lot more powerful. However, he still needed to adapt to them and become more familiar with their usage, before he would be able to translate their potential power into reality. It turned out that Bruce had made the right decision when he decided not to download Hulk's strength with most of his energy value, as currently, he was capable of facing the Hulk head-on. Gradually, time passed little by little. During this period, Black Widow and the others rarely stayed in the Avengers base, as they had their own tasks to complete. However, as opposed to them, no one gave Bruce orders as of now. Although he was still technically a level 6 agent, his performance during the New York War had revealed his terrifying strength. Even Nick Fury didn't know what to do with him, so for the time being, Bruce had no tasks, letting him be able to adapt to his new abilities a lot faster. The most Bruce had to do was train some new agents here and there, but that was nothing. As for Pierce, ever since he talked with Bruce last time, he had been unable to find him again. For these inconsequential matters, Bruce had no worries and didn't care about them. On this particular day, Bruce was training some level 3 and 4 agents as usual. Obviously, these level 3 and 4 agents had previously heard of Bruce's reputation, so they all took the chance to train hard, as they wanted to be appreciated by Bruce. But Bruce didn't care about their thoughts, as he never said anything. He was only here to relax and complete his task, nothing more, nothing less. Bruce. Just then, a voice came from outside of the training ground. A woman in a tights walked in through the door, said woman naturally being the Black Widow. Every agent present stopped their training at the same time, almost as if they had rehearsed this. At the Avengers base, no low-level agent was unaware of the legendary agent that was Black Widow. Black Widow just glanced at the crowd and nodded, then directly said to Bruce, "I have something to tell you." Seeing Black Widow so serious, Bruce told the agents to continue their training before following after her. After Bruce had followed Black Widow into an office inside the Avengers base that required one to be at least a level 8 agent to enter, Black Widow finally revealed what she came for. "There is a very urgent matter, however I don't know much about it. Fury will give you the specifics in person." After saying that, the door opened, and sure enough, it was S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Nick Fury himself. "I heard Pierce met you?" Fury asked as soon as he entered. Bruce smiled after hearing this, and he knew that this thing could not be hidden from Fury. But with the professional level of Pierce's people, Fury had no way of knowing what they were talking about that day. "Yes, he wants me to serve him." Bruce didn't hide it at all, as in fact Pierce had indeed originally wanted him to serve him. Black Widow looked surprised and bewildered upon hearing what Bruce said, as she didn't expect Bruce to reveal it so easily. When Fury heard this as well, he narrowed his eyes and looked at Bruce. "Mr. Fury is not looking for me just for this matter, right?" Bruce wasn't nervous, as Fury had just wanted to see his reaction. In fact, Fury had indeed just wanted to see Bruce's stance on the matter, and Bruce's answer made Fury very satisfied. Fury didn't say much after that. He directly opened the office's big screen, and on it a bombardment video was being displayed. Stark is missing. It was indeed Iron Man's house that was being bombed, and this signified the beginning of the plot for Iron Man 3. Chapter 79, 10 Rings. The plot of Iron Man 3 had officially begun. Meanwhile, as Fury took a look at the screen, he saw Iron Man's villa being attacked. This was no ordinary attack, as no matter how he looked at it, this was clearly an organized and planned terrorist attack. Fury then explained to Bruce what had happened the past few days. After the New York War ended, Thor had instantly returned to Asgard. Dr. Banner, on the other hand, because of his terrifying destructive power which he had little control of, chose to stay in a secret location only known to the senior members of S.H.I.E.L.D. This was also a kind of disguised protection for him. Iron Man, however, hardly went out of his properties during this time, as his armor had been greatly damaged and was in urgent need of repair. This period of time when Iron Man was at his weakest had proven to be a huge opportunity to a certain group who had abducted him a long time ago, also known as the Ten Rings. The leader of this group was rumored to be named Mandarin, and he named the organization based off of the number of rings on his hands. However, unlike what Bruce had read in the books, this Mandarin character didn't have Chinese ancestry. Regardless, the Ten Rings he had founded was a very powerful terrorist organization, and they had carried out many operations throughout the years. And precisely this powerful terrorist organization had recently set their sights on Iron Man, or more accurately, it was Mandarin that had chosen him. Almost immediately after, Iron Man had announced that he would fight against them to the bitter end. And as a consequence to this announcement, Mandarin had bombed Iron Man in every sense of the word. During the bombing, Iron Man had used the Mark armor to make a last stand, but because of the attack being too sudden, Iron Man had finally lost and had disappeared from the public eye. This was the most important event that had happened in recent times, second only to the New York War, of course. Because of the timing of the attack, S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't have enough people to deal with this, as they still had to rebuild New York along with a lot of other things. Completely helpless for the current matter, Fury went to Bruce, as if they wanted to find where Iron Man was located now. Bruce was the most optimal candidate. "So, does Mr. Fury want me to handle this?" Bruce sat down, his face utterly calm despite the situation. No one knew more about the future than him, so he wasn't really interested in saving Iron Man. After all, Iron Man didn't need anyone's rescue at all, as he himself was his own savior. The only thing that interested Bruce currently was the man behind this attack, Mandarin, as well as the puppet master that manipulated everything from behind the scenes, Aldrich Killian. This was the task that the system had given him, and there was only half a month remaining before the time limit of the task ran out. But what truly surprised Bruce was the rate of which the plot was developing. He only had half a month left and he was this far into the plot, truly too fast. Iron Man had presumably already developed his armor during this half a month, and his latest innovation should be the Mark 11 armor. The thing that made Iron Man so powerful was precisely the fact that he had a frighteningly developed brain. But Bruce could understand why he had been madly developing his armor all the time. It was only natural for him to know, as he himself was the reason that Iron Man felt pressured to make a better armor. In some ways, it could be said that he had helped promote Iron Man's research and development speed of his armor. Regarding this, Bruce was not surprised at all. S.H.I.E.L.D. has a lot of work to do right now, and Captain America and the others are not here at the moment. "The only person that can handle this at present is you," Fury said in a serious manner. He couldn't command Bruce to work, firstly because he wasn't qualified to do so, and secondly and more importantly, because it would only be counterproductive. That was why he added a hint of "please" in his tone. Although Bruce appeared to be a level 6 agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. on the surface, in reality he was so powerful that the organization had no control of him whatsoever. He was exactly like those superheroes they had decided to make use of. S.H.I.E.L.D. couldn't control them at all. "Rest assured, I will handle this matter well," Bruce replied. Fury's meaning was for him to find Iron Man, as Iron Man truly had too much of an influence in modern society. Fury nodded slowly after hearing Bruce's answer. Now that Bruce had promised, he could finally relax. As for how Bruce would handle the matter, that was completely up to him and he couldn't intervene even if he wanted to. Afterwards, Fury gave Bruce all the information they had on Mandarin and let him study it. At last, only Bruce remained in the room, and he carefully analyzed Mandarin's previous videos. If it was based off of the plot of the movie, then Mandarin was just a front, a puppet. The true mastermind manipulator from behind the scenes was Aldrich Killian, a developer of biotechnology that could actually be regarded as another less powerful version of the extremists. The first thing Bruce had to do was complete the task given by the system, and after that he wanted to find Killian's biotechnology. It was truly special, as once a person had been injected with the drug, their tissues and cells would undergo great changes. Whether it be combat effectiveness or resilience, they would both undergo a massive change and become extremely powerful. It could be said that this was an extremely powerful ability. however whether it was worth it for Bruce to download was another matter completely. There is half a month left from the task deadline, but I can't wait. I should make this plot end quickly. As long as he killed Mandarin and Aldrich Killian, the plot of Iron Man 3 would be regarded as complete. For this particular plot, except for the energy value he would get after completing the task, Bruce had no other interests. After deciding on his plan, Bruce stepped out of the room. His first matter of business was to find Iron Man, but he was not going to bring him back. This could be regarded as a trial for Iron Man, one that he needed to pass all by himself in order to grow stronger. The plot would continue to progress regardless of how fast the previous arc was completed, and this was exactly what Bruce wanted. Soon afterwards, Bruce wore his latest upgraded Mark armor and left the Avengers base directly. On the second floor of the Avengers base, Black Widow and Fury were currently watching Bruce's back as he made his departure. Can he really complete this task? Black Widow spoke with a hint of doubt on her face as she looked at Fury. We are out of options anyway, and there are internal problems inside S.H.I.E.L.D. right now. Pierce is trying to find a way to move me out of my position, Fury said. Evidently, he had also been having a hard time during this period. The New York War had a big impact on all parties involved, and that was especially so regarding the public, who had heavily rejected and despised the decision the congressmen came to at that time. Although in the end it was proven that the congressmen were wrong, he knew that those arrogant congressmen would not let it go at that. They were just lacking a good excuse to make him step down. That was a big reason as to why he asked Bruce regarding his meeting with Pierce, and also why Bruce's answer had satisfied him so much. That matter alone had proved that Bruce was someone worthy of his trust. Well, I went to meet the captain previously. These days he has been hanging around with a man named Sam Wilson. Other than that, there are still many things waiting to be dealt with. After Black Widow said that, she instantly left the Avengers base. Fury said nothing. But inwardly, he had a feeling that something big would happen soon, he just didn't know why, or what exactly. In the time it took for them to finish their conversation, Bruce had already traveled thousands of kilometers away from the Avengers base, and he was currently in Florida. Chapter 80, Base. According to Bruce's memories, Iron Man came here after his home got bombarded. At this moment, Bruce was flying with a high speed at several thousand meters in the air, and he had already activated his tracking and locating system. These functions came to be because of his armor. After all, he had initially downloaded it from Iron Man, and even with his upgrades, it was still similar to the original in many ways. As long as he managed to find where Iron Man's armor was, he would easily be able to get an accurate location. Eventually, as the sky turned dark, Bruce finally got something. Beep, beep. Right at that moment, a red dot appeared on the screen in front of Bruce. Naturally, it was where Iron Man's armor was located, as well as the man himself. Bruce's guess had been correct, Iron Man was wearing his latest Mark 11 armor. It was a level higher than his own upgraded armor, however the Mark 11 armor made this time had been made under different circumstances. Yet although the details were somewhat different, there wasn't a huge difference in the main aspects. It didn't matter much anyway, as the truly powerful armor was the Mark 50. That SUT had been made with nanotechnology and was vastly superior to the point of not being comparable. As for the other models, they were almost all the same in terms of power, the only thing different was their color and performance. Now that Bruce had located Iron Man, he instantly activated his armor and headed towards the target location. Swoosh! The speed of his suit of armor was truly too fast, as it exceeded the speed of sound, creating a huge sonic boom in his wake. The armor that had been modified by the system was completely different from the armor that Iron Man had developed. Especially in terms of its material, it was much stronger than Iron Man's armor. Although the armor on Bruce's body was only a Mark 10, its performance and power were even stronger than the original. At this moment, a man wearing a t-shirt was pulling a set of red and white battle armor. This was the armor he had recently developed, but now that its energy had already been exhausted, he was unable to activate it. Not to mention flying with it, not even a simple activation was possible. This was one of the benefits of having the system. With the support of the system, the armor on his body had virtually limitless energy, making him not have to worry about it all. As for this t-shirt wearing man, he was naturally Iron Man, the zillionaire, Tony Stark. Without the protection and assistance of his armor, he was merely a mortal. Such cold weather had already made it difficult for him to endure, not to mention the mental strength required to drug that armor with him as well. In this region that was so desolate without anyone in sight, his path seemed endless, as if he couldn't reach the end no matter how hard he tried. Swoosh! While Iron Man was in a state of despair, he heard a familiar rumble. Following which, he immediately raised his head. In the darkness of night, a black armor, seemingly like an ice-cold metal that didn't give off the slightest aura of life, stopped in front of him. Upon seeing the suit of armor, Iron Man naturally knew who he was. He put down the rope in his hand and sat on the ground. Was it Fury that asked you to come here? Now you see what a drowned rat I truly am, right? At present, Iron Man had suffered a huge blow mentally. Not only was his home bombarded, but his newest Mark armor had also used up all of its power. Iron Man at this moment was nothing more than an ordinary mortal. In fact, he wasn't any stronger than an average guy from down the block. Then, the black armor opened slightly, so as to reveal Bruce's face. The New York War has had a huge impact on you. I know that you were very nervous when you passed through the wormhole, Bruce spoke, his expression as calm as ever. I've never thought of facing that kind of enemy, Iron Man looked at Bruce and said. In reality, he wasn't afraid, but rather just nervous at that time. There were many people there that he wanted to protect, but he was afraid that he wasn't powerful enough. That was why after the New York War ended, he had gone all out to develop his armor, hoping to create a steel core. Only in the armor could he truly feel at ease. In the future, the enemies we will have to face will be even more powerful than the ones we have encountered in the past. And you are extremely important. I know there is anxiety in your heart, but it doesn't matter, since you have the ability, you have to use it and do something. Bruce smiled. He wanted to help Iron Man break out of his current predicament, which would be beneficial for the development of the future plot. I wish I didn't have this ability, Iron Man said. He was very conflicted inside, and he didn't know what to do. While he was confident that he could protect everyone on the outside, in reality, he didn't seem to be able to protect anyone. I'll deal with the matter regarding Mandarin. But you'll have to face the difficulties yourself. And with that, he once again closed his mask. He only came here to confirm that Iron Man was fine. As for how Iron Man could overcome his difficulty, Bruce had already said everything he could. You should at least give me a bit of energy. I don't know how long it'll take until I'll be able to get out of this damn place otherwise. When Iron Man saw that Bruce was about to leave, he immediately shouted his request. The weather here was simply too cold for him. If you head east, there will be a gas station. That was the last sentence that Bruce left behind. After he finished speaking, he immediately activated his armor and left, leaving Iron Man with a stupefied expression on his face. Hey, Bruce! At least leave me some clothes to wear. Iron Man shouted again, but Bruce had already disappeared. It was impossible for him to hear him. Iron Man, who had thought he would be saved, was completely speechless. He felt a bit regretful in his heart. If he had known earlier that Bruce would leave him like this, he wouldn't bother saying all that nonsense, and would instead request for a piece of clothing. But wait, what had Bruce said just now? He would help him deal with Mandarin. Nonsense. All of a sudden, the pride in Iron Man's heart instantly recovered. He was a zillionaire, the world's famous chairman of Stark Industries, and the smartest man to exist. When had he ever needed someone else's help? What kind of a joke was this? Just you wait, Bruce. Iron Man had already made up his mind. There would definitely be no next time to this event. He couldn't give Bruce a reason to look down on him. The matter that impacted him the most was that Bruce had said that they would eventually encounter even more powerful enemies than this in the future. He had also said that since he had the ability and was capable enough, he should do something with it. Iron Man was forced to repeatedly ponder on these two sentences, and a hint of alarm began to rise in his heart. In his eyes, Bruce wasn't just incomparably mysterious, But he also seemed to know many things that no one else knew. Unfortunately, even with his connections, he couldn't find anything regarding Bruce's true unknown background. However, there was one thing that he could be certain of, and it was that Bruce was not a threat to him. Afterwards, Iron Man took a deep breath and dragged his armor towards the gas station that Bruce had mentioned. Meanwhile, at this moment, Bruce was flying high in the air. His current goal was very simple, and that was to find Dr. Aldrich Killian's secret base. This base had the markings of Hydra all over it, and the Ten Rings organization also had some sort of connection with HYDRA. The only thing about that was, not many people knew about it. Beep discovered the target's location. After less than half an hour of flight, the armor indicated. Currently beneath him was an enormous villa. The guards there were tightly packed and they guarded all possible entrances as well as key locations. It seemed that there were currently many people there, and Dr. Aldrich Killian and Mandarin that Bruce had wanted to find, were among them. Chapter 81, Slaughter. The screen inside Bruce's armor had already revealed the exact location of the two men, Mandarin and Dr. Killian. Following which, Bruce activated his armor to land. Thump. And as soon as Bruce landed, a searchlight shot towards him, with dozens of submachine guns with infrared sights already aimed directly at his head. "Who are you? Leave here immediately!" Someone loudly shouted. The reason why they didn't immediately shoot was because they wanted to know who was so audacious and dared to enter the Ten Rings headquarters in such a manner. Bruce opened the mask from his armor and looked at the people who were aiming at him, before saying, "You guys have been surrounded by me, and it's not too late if you run away now." As soon as they heard what he said, all of them looked at Bruce like they were looking at a fool. Was this guy's brain not functioning? He was only one person but said that he had surrounded them. "Kill him," a guard leader said, ordering his subordinates to fire. Bang, bang. Countless bullets whistled toward him, but as they were very close to Bruce, all of the bullets managed to hit his armor. But to their dismay, their actions did not achieve the results they expected. "Fools! Since you don't want to surrender, go to hell instead." With that said, the shoulders of his armor opened and dozens of miniature bombs were fired. Boom! Boom! Such an armor was worthy of Iron Man's name, as it was a complete war machine, and its firepower was quite fierce to say the least. After beginning his assault, the sound of various screams and explosions intertwined, and the door of the villa was blown open. Inside the villa, Dr. Killian was conducting his experiment with Mandarin sitting next to him eating a burger. The scene here was not the same as what was displayed in the video Bruce had watched before. Boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden, countless explosions sounded out and shocked Dr. Killian. "What's going on?" he asked loudly, followed by the guards next to him immediately taking out their pistols. At this moment, all of them took a look at the monitoring device, only to see a black steel monster causing havoc in the fight outside. It was a complete slaughter, with bodies flying everywhere. "Doctor, we are being attacked!" someone cried out. The guards outside the villa were basically a mess at the moment. These people weren't Bruce's match at all, and all they could do was become Bruce's energy value. Unfortunately for him, their numbers weren't anything to be shocked at. Otherwise, Bruce would have another huge harvest in his mission. As Dr. Killian looked at the human figure in the surveillance video, his expression slightly darkened. "This kind of armor? Is that Tony Stark?" His first thought was that this was Iron Man, but as soon as the thought came it was rejected by him. Iron Man's villa had been destroyed by him, and even Iron Man himself had also disappeared. Moreover, he had never seen this set of armor before. His biggest concern now was how exactly could the enemy find him in such a short period of time. Boom! Right as he thought of that, the door of the underground base was directly blown open. And from the smoke, a black figure walked out, like a ghost coming from the abyss. The color and shape of the armor was especially terrifying for them, as it almost made Bruce look like a grim reaper made of steel. "Are you Dr. Killian?" The mask from the armor opened, revealing Bruce's face. He took a look around at the place, and as of right now, there weren't many guards left standing. Most of them were either dead or fleeing. As for those who did not leave, they were all people who had already been injected with the biological virus. Besides them, the only other one left was naturally Mandarin, the puppet. At this moment, Mandarin was hiding beside the sofa, his entire body trembling, no longer having the dignity of the past. Seeing that, Bruce could now almost be sure that the Mandarin in front of him was a puppet, as described in the plot of the movie. As if it was the same Mandarin from the comics, he would never show such a cowardly look. "Who are you, one of the S.H.I.E.L.D's people?" Dr. Killian put down the experimental equipment in his hand and looked at Bruce with a solemn expression on his face. He was now sure that he had never seen this person in front of him before, and he didn't even know of his existence. "That is not important, but since you are all here, you have really saved me a lot of trouble." With that said, Bruce was ready to attack. Just as Bruce was about to strike, a person who was covered in flames suddenly appeared in front of Bruce and attacked him. Boom! Bruce raised his hand and blocked the powerful attack. These people who had been injected with the biological virus could not be called human anymore. Their strength and attack power were incomparably more powerful than normal humans, moreover their body temperature was also extremely high. Although Bruce's armor was sturdy, it couldn't completely negate the attacks of these mutants. Thump! Bruce crashed into a wall, almost destroying the entire house alongside him. Not bad. At this moment, the armor warned him that his arm had been seriously damaged and needed to be repaired. Bruce slowly stood up, and 6 mutants injected with the biological virus almost immediately swarmed and attacked him again. The high temperatures that their bodies generated could even melt steel, making them a small threat. Crack! At the next moment, however, Bruce directly stored his armor into the system warehouse, as he didn't want his armor to get too damaged here. Otherwise, it would be a bit troublesome to repair it. After storing his armor, however, Bruce's face dropped to an all-time low, making his face cold as a serial killer. Around him, the mutants' bodies all burst into flames and began rushing towards him. Boom! But in the next moment, Bruce's body erupted with dazzling lightning, and a terrifying power surged out, enveloping the dozens of mutants surrounding him. The lightning Bruce controlled could reach hundreds of thousands of volts, and even the mutants were unable to resist that. Boom! In merely an instant, all of the mutants surrounding him exploded, shattered, and ultimately died, making Bruce gain even more energy value. The energy values he obtained from a single mutant amounted up to a bit more than the amount he obtained from killing a single Shitori. Seeing this scene, Dr. Killian's face changed drastically. A human could actually release lightning? Are you Thor, the god of thunder? The New York War had already affected the entire world. And the Avengers became the most well-known group of all, as basically no organization didn't not know of them. One of them could control lightning, and he was actually the god of thunder from the Norse mythology of Northern Europe. How could this not shock Dr. Killian? But he knew Thor's appearance, and the person in front was completely different from Thor. You don't need to know. A flash of light appeared in Bruce's eyes as he appeared next to Dr. Killian in an instant. Dr. Killian's body was paralyzed, but a powerful flame erupted from his entire being, shooting out towards Bruce. Boom! The powerful flames reached several thousand degrees, and all of the surrounding equipment was completely melted or burned. Dr. Killian was very confident that even steel would instantly melt at such a high temperature. However, to his complete shock, Bruce walked out of the flame completely fine. What he didn't know was that Bruce's body was a demigod body, and such flames couldn't affect him at all. Even his hair hadn't burned, not even a little. It's over. Without the slightest hesitation, Bruce attacked and left a residual blur of a shadow. His entire body was suffused with terrifying lightning, and after reaching Killian in an instant, he struck. Boom! The whole villa began shaking. Even if Dr. Killian had been injected with the biological virus, he was ultimately facing Bruce, who was comparable to a real god. With just one punch, half of Dr. Killian's body had exploded and completely shattered, turning into dust in front of the blazing flames. Chapter 82, Task. Even steel wasn't enough to withstand Bruce's punch, not to mention a mere Dr. Killian who had simply undergone a modification with the help of the biological virus. At this moment, he fell to the ground in pain, leaving only his upper body wriggling on the ground. Ah! Who the hell are you? The red flames on Dr. Killian's body still did not dissipate. This kind of flame was able to regenerate and reconstruct the body's cells in a short period of time. In reality, this was a different type of regeneration ability that could regrow limbs, hence making it extremely powerful. However, this kind of ability was also limited. If one was regenerating a severed limb, it would take a relatively long time. So as of now, Dr. Killian had been completely crippled by Bruce. Killian raised his head to look at Bruce, whose power was beyond his wildest expectations. He was able to destroy his lower limbs merely with his physical strength alone. You don't need to know. Mandarin, don't make any unnecessary efforts, you won't be able to escape. While Bruce was talking to Dr. Killian, Mandarin was slowly crawling on the ground, trying to sneak out. Mandarin was truly hopeless at this point, and that was his only shot of surviving his current predicament. After all, the power Bruce had revealed was not something a human could have. The Mandarin's face turned pale. After receiving Bruce's warning, he sat on the ground blankly. The flames on Dr. Killian were burning a bit stronger than before, and his lower limbs were slowly recovering. But it was impossible for him to return to normal in a short amount of time, no matter much he struggled. Bruce slowly squatted down next to him, pinching Dr. Killian's neck directly using his hand. The flames produced with the help of the biological virus simply had no effect on Bruce, which made Killian sink even further into despair. Right as Bruce came into contact with Dr. Killian's body, his information immediately appeared in front of him. Name: Aldrich Killian. Identity: Scientist. Ability: Top-grade fighting technique, 200 MB, extremis virus, energy value, 50, firearms proficiency, 300 MB. Upon looking at his abilities, Dr. Killian seemed extremely weak, at least at first glance. The reason he was so powerful was exactly because he had the extremis virus ability, which made him way more powerful than he should be. It was precisely this ability that allowed the originally somewhat disabled Killian to morph into his current appearance. Although the required energy value was not much, this was still not a bad ability. During their previous battle, Bruce had obtained a few points of energy value, which was enough for him to download Killian's extremis virus. Such an ability was not very useful to the current Bruce, but what he needed now were various types of special abilities so he could further upgrade his abilities. For example, this extremis virus could completely merge into his god bloodline, thereby making his god bloodline become more powerful. Bruce's current goal was to download various special abilities, so that he could constantly be integrating them into his main 3 abilities, or perhaps even into a new one. Regardless, the more abilities he obtained, the more powerful the integrated ability would become. However, with that said, the ordinary abilities were no longer in the scope of Bruce's consideration. Without hesitation, Bruce directly chose to one-click download it. Beep, download complete. Beep, congratulations, you've obtained the extremis virus ability. In fact, Bruce could just inject this biological virus into himself, but his body had far surpassed humans already, and if he injected it directly, it would not have any effect on his body. Thus, he could only download it. After doing all of this, Dr. Killian was no longer of any use to Bruce, so after a split second, a flash of lighting began surging in Bruce's hands. This lightning began pouring into Killian's body like countless little snakes, destroying every cell in his body. Ah! Finally, under that powerful lightning force, Killian's body began to collapse. Boom! The next moment, Killian's body, or at least what was left of it, exploded. Dying just like that. After killing Aldrich, Bruce began slowly walking towards Mandarin. While Mandarin was only a puppet and could be said to be innocent in some regards, Bruce didn't care. Mandarin was just one of the targets the system had asked him to kill, nothing more, nothing less. I was just a temporary puppet, I am innocent. Mandarin's face became very pale, but when he looked at Bruce's ice-cold gaze, his entire body trembled as he pleaded for himself. However, Bruce couldn't care less about him. Whether he was actually guilty or not didn't matter to Bruce. Furthermore, in the various terror activities that Ten Rings had previously done, this temporary puppet Mandarin was at least somewhat involved. The lightning on Bruce's body raged and surged forward once again. Bruce had previously checked Mandarin, and he was just an ordinary person without any special abilities at all, making him somewhat skeptical if this was the real Mandarin or not. While he wasn't sure if it was his real target, there was one surefire way to find out, and Bruce would rather kill an innocent by mistake than potentially let his target escape. Under the powerful lightning that surged into his body, the so-called Mandarin's body was completely destroyed. Beep, congratulations, you have killed Dr. Killian and Mandarin. Beep, congratulations, you have completed the mission and have gained a total of 3,000 points of energy value. The sound of the system sounded out just as Bruce killed Mandarin, making him positive that he killed the right target. It was just, Bruce had never expected that the task reward this time around had actually netted him 3,000 points of energy value. This was equivalent to half of what he harvested during the New York War. Originally Bruce was still worried about getting more energy value, but he didn't expect that the reward for this mission was such a ridiculous amount. To the current Bruce, energy value was everything. And this time around, he was quite satisfied with his gains. Beep, new mission has been issued. The host is to obtain the trust of Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch within 3 months. A new mission had been given to him, and it was actually regarding Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. This had really pleasantly surprised Bruce. He had already been preparing, and had even gained Pierce's trust. Through him, he could pretty easily access the European secret base of HY. According to the timeline, during the next few days the twin siblings would become superheroes with the help of the Mind Gem. And whether it be the abilities of Quicksilver or the Scarlet Witch, Bruce had his designs on both of them. Scarlet Witch's abilities were especially a priority, as she possessed inconceivable power. The only slight issue was that even she hadn't totally grasped that power, much less someone else. But with the system's help, Bruce didn't have to worry about that at all. Quicksilver on the other hand, although he was not the same as the superior Quicksilver from the books, his speed had still definitely surpassed all of the Avengers. The new mission had required him to obtain the trust of these two twin siblings. While that would be somewhat difficult for him previously, that was not the case anymore. All he had to do was repeat what he had done with Parker. However, it wasn't all going to be easy, as he still had to find a way to enter Hydra's base. Even if he knew its location, entering was another thing, and all of this had to be done within 3 months. The plot was progressing much faster than what Bruce had expected. After that, Bruce began cleaning up everything here. Especially those surveillance videos, Bruce destroyed them all. He didn't want his abilities to be fully exposed yet, and definitely not in such a manner. After completing all of this, Bruce once again put on his armor and returned to the Avengers base. This time around, he had single-handedly killed Mandarin and Killian, which meant that the plot of Iron Man 3 was officially over. Chapter 83, Message. If everything went like it should have, the Iron Man 3 plot would still be going on, and wouldn't finish for a long time. However, a variable had appeared, and its name was Bruce. He advanced every plot by a decent margin, and for Bruce, this meant that he no longer needed to completely go with the flow as he had originally done. This was only so for the time being, as Bruce was still relatively early into the plot. However, in the future, he would be able to fully control the plot and do whatever he wanted without consequences. However, what disappointed Bruce a little was that after the end of Iron Man 3's plot, the system had not given him a new function. But while he was a tad disappointed, he could still understand. If he wanted the system to open up more and more powerful functions, he needed to complete tasks related to the real plot, and not short plots with relatively no meaning. Besides, the current functions of the system were more than enough for him to do many things. Soon after, Bruce returned to Avengers base. At this moment, the Avengers base had many agents on guard duty, yet no superheroes. It made sense if one thought about it. The superheroes such as Captain America were the S.H.I.E.L.D.'s trump card. Wherever there was a major accident, the Avengers would be dispatched. So naturally, they wouldn't use their trump card for guard duty. As for Bruce, he no longer had to obey S.H.I.E.L.D.'s orders. This was of course, because Bruce was strong enough. If it was anyone else, they would have long since been kicked out as an example to the others. Just as Bruce entered the Avenger base, Fury walked in his room. "I've received news that the Ten Rings headquarters has been destroyed and Mandarin has also died." Fury looked at Bruce, a tad surprised. This was because he had never given Bruce such an order, he had only wanted Bruce to bring Iron Man back. And yet unexpectedly, Bruce had directly wiped out the Ten Rings in their entirety, which was way beyond his expectations. For such a large organization to be destroyed in such a short amount of time, was truly surprising, as even S.H.I.E.L.D. themselves didn't know the location of their headquarters. At this moment, Bruce was even more mysterious to Fury than he already was. "Stark will be back soon. He's fine." Of course, Bruce knew what Fury was concerned about. It was mainly about Stark's safety. Upon hearing Bruce's reply, Fury stopped saying anything else. Before this, the moment Bruce told him everything related to Parker, he already knew that he wouldn't be able to control him. This was especially the case now that Pierce had set his eyes on Bruce, tying Fury's hands even more. He had absolutely zero control over Bruce, as if he attempted to force Bruce to do anything, it would only backfire. "Go and have a good rest. I'll take care of matters now." After saying that, Fury immediately left. The Ten Rings organization had had a great relationship with HYDRA, and Fury had wanted to find out something from this event. He had even suspected that there were Hydra undercover agents inside of S.H.I.E.L.D. But he couldn't be certain, so for the time being, he wouldn't let anything that was related to Hydra go easily. However, Fury would never have imagined that his immediate superior, the former director, would actually be a member of the HYDRA. And regarding this, Bruce would naturally not tell him. After that, Bruce returned to his room and opened his system panel. Name, Bruce Lite. Identity, Level 6 Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Ability, Demigod Body, God's Bloodline, Godly Fighting Ability, Control of Thunder and Lightning, Spider Telepathy, Extremis Virus, Body and Shield as one. Warehouse, Super Vibranium Shield, Mark 8 Armor. Balance, $2 million. Energy value, 3,150 points. This time, destroying the Ten Rings organization had netted him more than 3,000 points of energy value in total. With such a large amount of energy value, he could integrate his abilities one by one without suffering too much. However, Bruce didn't do that, because each point saved was precious, and the real effects of integration were only revealed when multiple abilities were involved. So since he didn't have a lot of new abilities yet, Bruce would use the over 3,000 points for other purposes. The big problem he faced now was how to enter the European secret base of HYDRA. Pierce was definitely his breakthrough point, but he could not directly ask him about it, otherwise Pierce would get suspicious. He had also not seen Black Widow or Captain America recently, which probably meant that he would soon enter the Captain America, the Winter Soldier, plot, or at least that was his guess. As for the plot of Thor, The Dark World and Guardians of the Galaxy, both occurred in Asgard and outer space, so he could probably not participate. During this period of time, it was best for Bruce to speed up the plot of Avengers, Age of Ultron. But this required some time, and he could not do it at present. Fortunately, his deadline was 3 months. Otherwise, he really wouldn't be able to complete this mission. Bruce also didn't plan on participating in the plot of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, as there really wasn't much that interested him there. During that plot, S.H.I.E.L.D. would dissolve and nothing else of much importance would happen. Although the Winter Soldier was very powerful, he didn't have any abilities that interested Bruce. Therefore, Bruce's next plan was to enter Hydra's secret base. Then make Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch trust him completely, all within the 3-month timeframe given by the system. Optimally, he would finish that before the start of Avengers, Age of Ultron. Only then would he be able to take complete control of the situation. Thinking about this, Bruce began to make plans. Once he finished the task given by the system, he could report the location of Hydra's secret base to S.H.I.E.L.D. And with that, he would advance the plot to the second stage. He thought back to the Marvel movies he had seen again and again, so as not to miss anything. In the following days, Bruce ignored the outside world completely. Iron Man appeared in the public eyes again after having been missing for 3 to 4 days. Although that had caused some waves, it had nothing to do with Bruce. Hulk was nowhere to be found, and was completely hidden by S.H.I.E.L.D. Hawkeye had probably established his own family by now, so there was nothing special about him. The most active and busy people of the Avengers were Black Widow and Captain America, who were actively completing task after task for S.H.I.E.L.D. While everything was slowly developing, Bruce had been staying inside the S.H.I.E.L.D. the whole time. During this period, he had been training new agents and becoming more familiar with his abilities. It could be said that his life was tedious and ordinary during this time. I have fully adapted to my 3 new abilities, and my biggest advantage in combat is now my physical strength and defense as well as my ability to control lightning and thunder. During these days, he had developed a comprehensive understanding of his body. The most important point was that he learned how to make full use of his strength in combat, and it could be said that Bruce had already mastered everything related to it. Although he had not downloaded any new abilities these days, his overall strength had improved a lot. Beep! It was at this time that Bruce's cell phone on the table suddenly vibrated. The message he received didn't contain any words, just numbers that represented coordinates. Finally, you couldn't hold back. After reading the message, a hint of a smile appeared on Bruce's face. Fury wouldn't contact him in this way, and the only other person inside S.H.I.E.L.D. that knew his mobile number was Pierce. It seemed that Hydra had begun acting at last. Chapter 84, Meeting. In fact, the moment Bruce had revealed his identity, he already knew for a fact that Pierce would never ignore him. After all, his previous performance was excellent, and Pierce wouldn't abandon such a talented person for no reason. Bruce had given this matter a lot of thought before deciding to meet up with Pierce last time. Of course, he could only do this because he knew about the following plot. When the plot of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, started, Pierce's true identity would be discovered. However, while this was indeed the case, Bruce could still use the period of time between plots to execute his plan. And sure enough, Bruce's guess was proven to be correct, as at this moment Pierce had chosen to initiate contact with him. Pierce was after all the former director of S.H.I.E.L.D., so it was a very simple thing for him to find Bruce's contact information. Whereafter, Bruce checked the coordinate information, and 950 was their meeting place. As a member of the top management of S.H.I.E.L.D., Pierce had the jurisdiction to contact Bruce directly and go above Fury's head. After that, Bruce tidied himself up and went to the place where he was supposed to meet Pierce. As expected, the location was very hidden and not many people knew about it. This location hadn't even been marked on the public map, making it practically non-existent. Fortunately, it was not too far away from Bruce's current location, and with his speed he would reach his destination within 10 minutes. Upon reaching the location, he saw an abandoned steel factory that hadn't been used in a long time. There was almost no one living within 5 kilometers of this location. It was night time by the time Bruce came, and coupled with the lack of moonlight, everything here seemed extremely dark and quiet. This was almost the ideal place for a secret meeting to take place. However, even after Bruce waited for around 10 minutes, Pierce still hadn't shown up. So cautious? Bruce smiled, and he could now grasp why Pierce had been able to hide within S.H.I.E.L.D. for such a long time without being found out, even managing to enter the top brass of the organization. It was entirely conceivable with how cautious and careful he was. When it came to this, Pierce was even more outstanding than the current director, Nick Fury. With that said, Bruce wasn't in a rush either, and he patiently waited. Buzz! Right at this moment, a black shadow came from afar and approached him at an extremely fast speed. But even so, Bruce didn't make any sudden movements, as there were other dangers within his perception of spider telepathy. And as expected, just after that shadow appeared, several other black shadows appeared within the range of his senses. They were hidden in a dark corner, and any ordinary human had no chance of sensing them. At the same time, Bruce could clearly sense that these people all possessed some sort of special ability. Trying to probe me? Bruce's eyes flickered. He wouldn't easily accept other people's probing. In his eyes, the reason for this probe was because the other party didn't believe him, which was why they chose to do this. Bruce deciphered this so he couldn't let the other party fulfill their wish so easily. Without the slightest hesitation, a flame instantly erupted from Bruce's body, making his entire body as hot as lava. This was the effect of the Extremis virus. Although it was not too powerful of an ability, it was enough to deal with these people with Bruce's current strength. Thump. In that instant, Bruce only left a blur of a shadow in his place. His entire body became incomparably hot, and the flames on his body truly erupted, instantly forcing the people surrounding him back. Bang! A gunshot was heard, with the target being Bruce's heart. However, in a flash, Bruce appeared next to the person that shot at him. Psst! Bruce raised his hand, his power amplified by the extreme burst of heat at several thousand degrees that accompanied him. Not to mention that this person was only made of ordinary flesh and blood, even steel would melt within a short period of time in front of this heat. Ah! The man madly screamed, and half of his body was directly devoured by the flames. But the matter was not over that easily, as next, Bruce struck with an even more powerful strength. There were a total of 5 people besieging him, and one of them had already been cut in half by Bruce. The rest of the original 5-man squad were quite powerful, however that was relative, as they were currently facing Bruce. These people weren't Bruce's match at all, and in less than a minute, the 5-man squad had been reduced to only 2 by Bruce. With that said, Bruce was obviously not going to let the remaining 2 people go. Stop! Someone yelled, but it was still a step late. Ah! The remaining 2 people were swallowed by flames. Even if these people were lucky enough to survive in front of the thousands of degrees of heat, they would still be crippled in the end. At this moment, all 5 members of the squad were bathed in a sea of flames, and they were all madly screaming out in pain. Suddenly, several lights instantly illuminated this place, and a figure appeared in front of Bruce. As he stood there, his eyes looked cold as if he was displeased by the events that transpired. I've already told you to stop just now. Why didn't you let them go? The voice belonged to Pierce, and the people he had just killed were all members of HYDRA. At this moment, he was extremely angry because the 5 people Bruce had maimed were all his elites. Originally, he had only wanted to test Bruce a little, but he had never even imagined that Bruce would strike back so heavily. This caused him to be on the brink of exploding in rage. But considering that he wanted to ask Bruce for help, he finally suppressed his anger in the end. They attacked with killing intent. Why would I let them go? Bruce's tone was extremely calm, as if he didn't care about the prestige of the top brass of S.H.I.E.L.D. at all. His words made the face of the other Hydra agents change color drastically. In their eyes, this Bruce character was way too arrogant. But Bruce being Bruce, he paid them no attention and ignored them, instead opting to look at Pierce with a solemn expression while he said that. If this was what you wanted to do by calling me out here, then I'll be leaving first. When dealing with such a person, one had to be tough. So tough, that the other party would be left with no way to deal with him. Of course, this only worked because Bruce was terrifyingly powerful and was practically unkillable by the other party. If this was not so, he would have already been killed countless times over. Having finished talking, Bruce ignored Pierce's reaction and got ready to leave, but of course, in the nick of time, Pierce began speaking. Stop, there are other matters we need to discuss. Since we are from the same organization, you should know how great the things we have to do are. Seeing that Bruce was about to leave, Pierce immediately said. Beforehand, he had just wanted to test Bruce's limits, but things had unexpectedly turned out like this. Bruce's strength also made him decide that if he wanted to complete that task, it could only be carried out by Bruce. Upon finding such a talent, it was absolutely impossible for him to let go. Hearing his words, Bruce turned around and stopped. As for why Pierce made an appointment to meet here, Bruce was also not sure even now. But since he met him in this way, then this was definitely not an ordinary matter. It definitely had to be related to Hydra's secret base. Chapter 85, Controlling the Situation. Seeing that Bruce had stopped, Pierce released a sigh of relief. The HYDRA organization had been established long ago, and even though it had infiltrated many organizations, they still didn't dare act too openly, as they were enemies with S.H.I.E.L.D. That was especially the case now, as the current S.H.I.E.L.D. was a lot more powerful than say 5 years ago. This big increase in strength was mainly because they now had the Avengers group, which meant that they would win any head-on battle with any organization. Nonetheless, even under such circumstances, Hydra was still trying its best to find a solution, otherwise they could only wait and perish. "Speak, and I'll see if I'm interested," Bruce said. Whether it be Hydra or S.H.I.E.L.D., they both had to pay attention to Bruce's emotions now if they wanted him to do something for them, as even S.H.I.E.L.D. couldn't force him. Currently, he was waiting to see what Pierce wanted him to do. If he merely wanted him to perform a terrorist attack, then he would just decline straight away. Pierce ordered his men to dispose of those people who had been maimed by Bruce. And since those people were no longer of any use to him, he would naturally throw them away without any hesitation. Pierce looked at Bruce and slowly said, "S.H.I.E.L.D. has just made a team of powerful people with superpowers called the Avengers, but you already know of this. With that said, we need to come up with some countermeasures." Pierce made his intentions as direct as he could, but Bruce already knew of Hydra's current situation, and he knew it very well. With the appearance of Iron Man, Hulk and the others, Hydra was truly facing an impossible crisis. Every single one of the Avengers were incomparably powerful, and not something they could deal with. Amongst them was even the Thor, a well-known myth-like existence. If HYDRA wanted to survive for a longer period of time, they had to train some of their own people who could fight against these Avengers. That was easier said than done, however, as under normal circumstances, it would be impossible. However, now, there was one special method to resolve their predicament. "They are unable to threaten me," Bruce said. It seemed that he didn't have any interest in Pierce's words. Hydra obviously wanted their own people to master some powerful superpowers, so that they could face the Avengers head-on. "You know of Loki's scepter, right?" At this moment, Pierce leisurely said, intending to see how Bruce replied. Upon hearing those words, Bruce slightly narrowed his eyes, his expression a little shocked. He managed to figure out what Pierce was referring to, but he still had to seem like he was completely unaware of it. "I know of it, but Loki's scepter was taken away by S.H.I.E.L.D. What do you mean by this?" Bruce pretended that he didn't know anything more regarding this, and that was within Pierce's expectations. "Yes, it was taken away by the top brass of S.H.I.E.L.D. But to be more precise, it was I who took it." Pierce smiled while he was saying that, seemingly very proud of his action and at the same time showing Bruce how influential he was within S.H.I.E.L.D. Without waiting for another question from Bruce, Pierce continued. "I put it in a very safe place. But this scepter has a special ability, and if we can use it correctly, we will be able to create people who could rival Hulk. We'll call these people the Supermen." Upon hearing those words, Bruce got the point. As per the original movies, Loki's scepter should be in Hydra's secret base right now, and through studying it, they would be able to create some Supermen. Although in the end they only managed to produce 2 such people, they were indeed able to contend with Captain America and the others. "I didn't expect that you have infiltrated so deeply inside S.H.I.E.L.D., but what does this matter have to do with me?" Bruce said. But although he asked such a question, he already had a vague guess in his heart. With this as an excuse, perhaps he would be able to enter the mysterious secret base of HYDRA. "The power of the scepter is very powerful, and we still can't fully control it. Ever since the beginning until now, there have only been 2 people that could bear its power. And although our organization has some people with special abilities, these two's power was on a different level. The problem here is, we don't have any experience with something this powerful." Pierce finally spoke of his purpose. The twin siblings' powers were very strong now, but they were just ordinary people beforehand. Faced with such a sudden increase in power, it was only natural that they were unable to control it for a period of time. Although these 2 could be counted as a trump card for HYDRA, they were still unable to use them immediately. This was a problem now that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s people were constantly applying pressure on them, and if they continued to delay, they would be faced with extermination. Therefore, they wanted to play their trump card as soon as possible, regardless of the consequences. But they couldn't do that, as they had no prior experience with it, and they had already lost many elites in their futile attempts. Their only option at this point was to find people with sufficiently powerful strength to train them, and Bruce was their ideal candidate. Before this, Bruce had helped Captain America in his recovery training, and coupled with the strength that Bruce had revealed in the past as well as just now, he was perfect for the job. I will arrange a reasonable excuse for you to leave S.H.I.E.L.D. for a period of time, which even Fury won't be able to see through. The only thing we need you to do is go to the secret base and help us train these two people. It really is that. Hearing Pierce's words was music to his ears, as he secretly laughed in his heart. At first, he was still worried about how he would enter the secret base of Hydra and make contact with the twins. But now, it appeared that Pierce was here to help. This is for the sake of our organization, so I hope you can act immediately, Pierce said. Although he wasn't very satisfied with Bruce's domineering attitude, Bruce was their only way to resolve this matter. If they took any longer, there might be even more unexpected events. What's in it for me here? Bruce asked, not immediately agreeing. It was only right, as if he agreed too quickly Pierce might suspect something, and he would be able to get more benefits this way as well. Truly two birds with one stone. For Hydra, as long as a person had desires, they would have a way to control that person. And as expected, after hearing what Bruce said, a smile appeared on Pierce's face. In the future, you will be the next director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Being the absolute leader of an organization that was above the law was indeed a great temptation. Okay, Bruce smiled, agreeing immediately. As for Pierce, he seemed to have found Bruce's desire, as well as the key to control him. I will arrange for someone to pick you up tomorrow morning. You don't have to explain anything to anyone, I will deal with that. After Pierce finished speaking, he immediately left. His goal had already been achieved, and the next step was to carry out the plan. Bruce also turned around and left. He was feeling pretty happy after the meeting. He managed to find an easy solution to his biggest problem in the most unexpected way he could think of. To him, this was quite a pleasant surprise. As for dealing with Fury's suspicions, he would let Pierce solve that for him. And thus, there would be no negative consequences for his actions this time around. Moreover, when the plots of Avengers: Age of Ultron launched, he could directly provide the location of the Hydra's base to Nick Fury. Everything was incomparably perfect, and at this moment, Bruce was like a god looking down on everyone. Whether it was Hydra or S.H.I.E.L.D., they were all pawns on his chessboard. And all he needed to do was control the entire situation like a true god. This marks the end of Part 11 of the story Marvel Unlimited Skills. I can download. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.